For a short time I lived in New York. This was during the time the city decided it was best to shut down a number of mental care hospitals, dumping 1,000s of people on the streets with no place to go. At the time I had taken an apartment manager job at a very small apartment complex in the downtown area. I have seen a lot of messed up stuff over the time I lived there, but hey, this was free rent in New York, and in this place this alone is worth its weight in gold. I'm a writer by trade, and I must admit the stuff I saw here, no writer or screenwriter would ever put to paper, that is not until now. For example, like one of those cat ladies, you only hear about in folklore. She died and they had to have animal control take away like 30 cats. I swear to God I had no idea she had that many. I thought she had like maybe 2 or 3. Anyway, last winter I was there, the last for a reason. I had another tenant who was even more messed up. I can only tell you my half of this story, which I assure you is messed up enough as it is. Let's get the Santa bit out of the way. One of the most profitable jobs in New York is to be Santa in December. If you're good you can bring in a few grand a week, and if you're really good you can bring in much more, according to the Santas at the local pub. I call the Furnace the pub where they gather Red Drunk Central. There you can learn all things Christmas, that is if you don't mind hearing it from a fat, drunk man in a red suit, and there are hundreds of them. Happy drunken fat men in red suits, puking inside alleys and hanging off the arms of all the barflies. This place, if you let it, can really disturb your world and childhood views of Christmas. A few doors down you can find a few elves and Mrs. Claus swinging on a stripper pole. So I get a call while I'm at the Furnace, Friday night, from one of my tenants. Apparently, they were alarmed at a decaying odor emanating from the unit next to hers. I knew the guy living in it. He was really old, so my first thought is the guy had died or something and the smell was his body. Morbid, I know, but this is New York. I was too drunk to drive, so I had one of the elves give me a ride back to my place. I asked the girl if she wanted to come with me to check on the guy, and she basically told me to piss off and that she didn't want to see a dead body, and then she reminded me who lived there. It didn't click right at first. The old guy that lived there was the local they called Jolly Red. He was the model Santa, the one that made the most and was the one that even dressed the part year-round. From what my new friend told me, he even made his suits out of real fur, by hand at that. The morbid side of me kicked back in and thought, who doesn't want to see a dead body? I guess she wasn't as drunk as I was. I told her to wait in the car for a few minutes, which she agreed to. Looking back on it, I really should have made her come with me. She did tell me to hurry as the Santas had money and she wanted to get back on the pole. She jokingly said she needed to find a special one she could hop up on, right in the red man's lap, and tell him what she really wanted. So I go up to the guy's door and knock a few times, yell, "Santa, are you okay? I'm coming in to check on you." That's not his real name, obviously. I really didn't know his real name, and I don't think anyone else did either. Of course, I get no response, so I unlock his door and head on in. The smell hit my sinuses like a brick in the face. Maybe more like an ice pick to the brain. I've gutted moose before, so I know a bad smell when I smell it. This was, well, it was about the same smell really. The same one when you go and cut a deer and hit its scent sac. That is to say, it smelled more than enough for me to believe there was a dead body somewhere in there, or maybe more than one. Still, I had to make sure before I called the police. I didn't want to call them in on a week-old pot roast, or because the refrigerator was left open or something. The owner of the complex made that very clear, that is not to call the police for the hell of it, as doing so could lead to more issues of another nature. So I went about exploring the apartment. I knew the layout already, most of the units are the same, so I began to search the apartment room by room whilst holding my t-shirt over my face to keep myself from gagging. I was really glad I had a few at the pub before I got the call, as Scotch has this special way of covering up the worst of the worst. The living room, the first room you see when you enter, was surprisingly neat and clean. There were a bunch of books on the coffee table lined up in a neat stack, and the telephone was on the cabinet by the wall where it should be. Then I looked at the corner and reflexively let out a damn, and backed up. There was a dog staring at me. It looked like a large pit bull, the ones they fight up here. It wasn't growling or anything, so I thought he was just scared, then started laughing at myself for being afraid of it. It still wasn't moving. I was a little creeped out by how much time had passed and it still wasn't moving. I thought nah, couldn't be, but sure enough, it was stuffed. The dude had a stuffed pit bull in his living room. Weird. I was still in a good mood at this point, had to chuckle to myself over getting afraid of a stuffed dog. I turned to my left and walked into the kitchen. The kitchen was a little bit messy, I could tell someone actually used this part of the apartment. There were just a couple knives in the sink, and the counter had some crumbs on it and stuff. I opened the refrigerator up, hoping to God that was where the smell was coming from. Nope, the refrigerator was completely empty. It looked like the guy hardly even used the apartment. There were almost no personal belongings in the living room or kitchen except for a couple plates that came with the place, and the weird-ass stuffed a dog in the living room. So I went back into the living room and holy crap, the dog had moved. Actually, it didn't, there was a second dog behind the couch that I hadn't noticed the first time. Still, it almost gave me a heart attack. This weirdo guy had two stuffed dogs in his living room, both watching in different directions. The second dog was not a pit bull, by the way, it was a little pug or some short-haired monster with large eyes. I don't know what they're all called. Needless to say, I was tripping pretty hard at this point and my heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. I need to correct myself here, not ringing but a cutting sound, the sound when you cut meat on a metal cutting board. Strange, I know, hell, I may have caught something when that smell hit my nose. Airborne tetanus or something. I had a drunk friend tell me once, to take the TET off the word tetanus and you know where it comes from. He was a little slow but could be funny at times. Anyway, I worked myself up a bit and went down the hallway and checked a closet. Nope, empty. The smell was definitely getting stronger now. Next up was the first bedroom. The smell wasn't so strong in there, so I didn't think I was going to find anything. I should probably point out by now that I had turned on all the lights in the place. I wasn't retarded or stupid as in going around with a flashlight or something like a drunk detective or Ghostbuster. This town had more than its share, any of which could be found in that boatweight we call the Yellow Pages. The neighborhood is not so good around here, so I'm always on guard for people jumping out and attacking me at night. Not as bad as the subway, mind you, but it can be bad at times. So I flick on the light in the bedroom, and it's pretty messed up. The mattress had been taken off of the bed, and the sheets were all torn up. There was a crap load of holes and scratches in the wall, which were at chest level, so they were most likely from punching and slash or scraping with a knife or something. Most disturbingly, there was a crap load of red stains on the carpet. They looked a lot like wine stains. Remember, I was drunk, so blood was not the first thing to pop in my mind, it actually was blood. I was an idiot and I will be the first to admit that, and should have to myself and called the police right then and there. All I remember thinking at this point is, forget about the deposit, this guy is going to get charged out the ass. The whole experience of being in this apartment was starting to get to me though. Every room I went into I was half expecting to find a dead body, so I just wanted to find the source of that smell, then get the hell out of there. So I went into the bathroom and there was a fur carpet in there. Except it wasn't a carpet, it was like 20 different little furs all laid out on the floor. They were mostly brown and black, but there were a couple of white ones. I couldn't tell if they smelled bad, but they were definitely not the main source. I went down the hall to the second bedroom, timidly muttering stuff like, "Mr. Santa, are you in here?" I started out in a good mood, but after getting startled that hard twice in a row, my adrenaline was going. It felt like I was in a horror movie. Anyway, I went into the bedroom and sure enough, there was a dead body. He was lying face down on his bed with his knees on the floor and his pants off, ass bare, and pointed straight at the doorway, at me. I guess he keeled over as he was putting on his Santa suit. After all, he had part of it on. Anyway, I got the hell out at that point and told the elf in the car what I saw. Of course, she didn't believe me until the police showed up. I never got to see the worst part. One of the cops told me about it. Apparently, this dude was a veterinarian and had been taking home all the dead bodies of animals he'd put down. This was his real job. The Santa job was just a side thing and added to his sick twisted fetish. He had made a fetish of skinning them all and just throwing the skinned bodies into the tub in the second bathroom. I guess the first bathroom was too good for that, so that's where he kept the furs. The worst of the worst part is that the guy died from a heart attack while doing something very bad with the intestines of one of the animals. Apparently, he had made a fetish of using their guts as sleeves and just let them pile up in the bathtub after he was done with them. In the end, the deposit didn't begin to cover the damage to the apartment, let alone the emotional damage he did to the apartment manager or the people I would tell year after year. So each year when I see a Santa at the mall, this story pops into my head, and I know somewhere a half-naked Santa is doing bad things to dead things, and someplace a Santa's time is up. Thank you for letting me share this story with you, and stay paranoid, my friends.